Danny Garcia says he grew tired of being champion, but now he's back and he thinks he can beat Errol Spence. 100% sure he can beat him because he saw weakness in Errol Spence. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also subscribe to the channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang, notification gang, please hit the bell icon. Shout out to the super chats, channel donations, the Venmo donations, the Cash App, and the Patreon family. We work, and make sure you guys head over to Patreon right now. Sign up. It helps the channel, but it's also, you know, some different content that I'm going to be shifting over there. Link in the description in the affiliate section. Check that out. Holla at that link. Another alternative way here on the YouTube platform is hit the join button next to the subscribe button to get the same, you know, benefits and perks as the Patreon. I will be shifting content over there, and again, it helps the channel. So Danny Garcia, he did an interview with DAZN USA. It's on their YouTube. It'll be in the description box. And he said some interesting things about, you know, his reign of being a champion and how he was starting to feel and things like that. But he also mentioned Errol Spence, which is why you guys clicked on the title and clicked on the video. Danny Garcia says, quote, "It's the competition and the new goals that you set in your career. That's how he stays hungry in this game." He said, "I was a champion for a long time, and I just felt I was getting tired of that after a long time. That's when bad things happen. You've been training for so long, but mentally you're not all the way in it. I felt like I reached a point in my life and in my career where I'm a fighter and this is what I do. I'm going to miss it, and when it's gone, so I'm going to go in there and dedicate myself and finish strong because this is what I love. I am a fighter. This is what I want to do, and I am a champion. And I want to give it my all and be a world champion again. Right now, it's my love for the sport and my legacy, and I just want to accomplish more things. It can be done." You know, he's talking about fighting Errol Spence. He said, "I was told it was going to be Errol Spence or Manny Pacquiao, and I know I said in September, but it should be in the fall. I don't want to give false information about September, but it may be in the fall. It's either Manny Pacquiao or Errol Spence. That's what I was told." Danny Garcia goes on to say, "It doesn't matter to me about Pacquiao or Spence." He said, "Both of them are champs. Spence would be better because I would win 2 titles and become a 5-time world champion, but beating Manny Pacquiao would be an excellent thing for my legacy. It doesn't matter to me at this point. Yeah, for sure." You know, he said, "I was supposed to fight Spence in January. On the 25th, I was supposed to fight him. The fight was already done, and I'm glad I did fight in January because if I didn't fight in January, I would have been out of the ring for a long time." And that was the fight with Ivan Redcash, which he looked good, especially early. He kind of faded a little bit, and he got bit towards the end. But, you know, I thought Danny Garcia looked real sharp, especially in the early rounds. Danny Garcia, he continued and said, "No one knew about the pandemic, so I'm glad I pushed for the fight, and I'm glad I got to fight because I would have been inactive for a long time. I just feel like everything happens for a reason." And he's true, because I think his fight before that was Adrian Granados in like February to April of last year, so he would have been out of the ring over a year had he not fought and beaten Redcash. Danny Garcia goes on to say, "I had a southpaw, and whoever is next, Manny or Spence, it may be looking more like Spence, but if it's Manny and he says yes, then it's Manny." Danny Garcia continued when he was questioned about if he would get full credit since Spence is coming off of an accident. "Do you think about those types of things?" And then Danny Garcia replied, "No, not at all, because if you're not 100%, then don't get in the ring." You know? So he says, if you're not ready, then don't get in the ring. Simple as. So he you know, he's basically saying that you shouldn't be fighting that level of fight if you're not ready. He went up and said, "I want to go up to 154 pounds. It's harder to make 147 because I grew into it. I grew into the weight. I'm a natural 147 pounder. In the beginning, I was walking around at 156, 157 when I first moved up. Now I walk around at 165 or 168. So I feel like when I get down to welterweight, I'm a big welterweight. I feel like I can compete against anybody. My skills and power could even carry up to 160. Even at 154, I could get the rematch with Keith Thurman or Sean Porter. I know those guys struggle to get down to 147. So even those types of fights are still available and make a lot more sense. It's that simple. I know Manny is getting older now, but he's coming off a big win. If he's old, then don't get in the ring. If Spence isn't better, then don't get in the ring, because I don't want to hear any excuses. I never made any excuses. He says, the underdog thing I've heard my whole career, so I'm used to being an underdog. I don't even feel right when they say Danny is supposed to win and the odds are on my side. It just doesn't feel right. Other than the Barclays Center, he says you can hear a pin drop when I beat them up. It's on paper. Errol Spence got a good hype behind him, but it comes down to fighting. The odds and underdog this. All this means is people don't know what I can do, and I've got to go out and prove it. That's it. Prove it to myself. I don't even have to prove it to anybody else because I already know what I can do. He says, and this is where it gets interesting, I saw things in the Mikey Garcia fight, even though he won that fight by a big score, but I saw things. I'm bigger than Mikey Garcia, and I'm stronger than Mikey Garcia. I think Mikey did some good things in that fight, but the bigger and better man beat him. In the Porter fight, Errol Spence, he was getting hit a lot. When I fought Sean Porter, it wasn't even a hard fight for me like that. It was just that he threw more and he won. That's it, basically. I saw Errol Spence get hit a lot in that fight with Sean Porter, and I seen a lot of mistakes that I can take to him. So he said he sees something. He says his toughest fight was Eric Morales. He said he broke my nose and cut me. I dug deep. I've never fought anyone like that. He had many tricks up his sleeve. He was old, but his technique and his mind were still so good. So that was, a lot of homage. He said, so I learned a lot in that fight. I didn't know he had a broken nose in that particular fight. He said that fight turned me into a champion. He's obviously referring to the first one, because the second one, he kind of stretched Eric Morales and pushed him. He did a round, he just spun around in a circle and stuff. So Danny, he had a lot to say. He was talking about feeling good and being set for life and fighting behind closed doors and different things like that. But he says 100% he can beat Errol Spence. And that's what he's supposed to say. It remains to be seen. Can he actually beat Errol Spence? They have to actually square off and get in the ring. Now, listen, this is what I love about this sport of boxing is it's only a matter of time. The best at the end, or you'll be ridiculed, they're going to have to fight each other. And I think Errol Spence for a while was the boogeyman at welterweight, and he was very hungry. And I'm not saying he's not hungry, but I'm saying he was hungry and he hadn't had the big fights yet under his belt in the numbers and all this stuff. So people use these things against the man Errol Spence, and then they would make it sound like he wasn't ready, or he had to get a belt first, or he had to do some numbers. And these guys were further along, like, oh, I've done this, I've sold out the Barclay, I've been on pay-per-view, I did wompty, right? So Errol Spence was kind of left in the dust chasing his dream, and he had to just keep working. And now everything has kind of caught up to Errol Spence's wishes from the beginning, the hungriness and whatnot. Everything's caught up because Errol Spence's hunger, his brand has now caught up with that. Because before, people like even Danny Garcia, he kind of didn't really seem too interested in fighting Errol Spence back in the day. Like when he was when Spence's name came up before the Kell Brook fight, or maybe even just after the Kell Brook. It was just like, oh yeah, he's cool. We'll see. I want to fight Sean Porter for the belt, for the WB. You know what I'm saying? And then, some people even thought Sean Porter was ducking Errol Spence. We know Pacquiao avoided the fight, him or his team, things like that. So this is all great news. Errol Spence, it's with his accident, this is going to be, his next fight has to be big. You know what I'm saying? In terms of people are going to be paying attention. They want to see if he's the same person. Does he look the same? How's he feeling? How's his weight cut? How's his punch retention? All that type of stuff. And boxing's like that. Sometimes it takes these little things. Like Danny Garcia said, he's been paying attention. He looked in the Mikey Garcia fight. Mike was doing some good things. He said that he was getting hit a little bit too much for his liking, or he was basically saying Errol Spence is there to be hit versus Sean Porter. So he feels he can do something. He's like, I'm bigger and stronger than Mikey Garcia. I have a different style and technique. So, this is good. Danny Garcia supposed to believe in himself. Was he going to say Errol Spence is going to whoop my ass when we fight? So I like it. Danny Garcia, he don't get a lot of credit, man. I think Danny Garcia, this is a real good fight with Spence. It's a telling fight. A former champion, a former unified champion from 140 who has a very good resume for his age bracket. Very good resume. And all things considered, where Errol Spence is at, the accident, all that just makes it for an even more compelling fight. So I'm definitely looking forward to this particular fight. And a quick word from the sponsor. Make sure you guys sign up for ESPN Plus. The link is in the description. ESPN Plus, the home of a lot of exclusive BTS content, like the Michael Jordan Last Dance documentary. They got some additional footage that didn't make the final cut. You can find that. Also archive footage of classic UFC fights and boxing matches, some from Conor McGregor. They got Mayweather versus Pacquiao. All that can be found on the ESPN Plus app. Very accessible if you have a mobile device or a tablet. Link in the description. It does help the channel when you guys click that. Get ESPN Plus as a standalone app, or you can combine it and get ESPN Plus, Hulu, and Disney Plus, all three apps, one price, and that's $12.99 a month. Again, shout out to everybody who's used my link, clicked on that, and set it up. It does help the channel in a phenomenal way. But back to Danny Garcia, very, very telling interview, and he said a lot of things. And I think he's fortunate, like he says, to have fought in January, because there was only a small margin. By mid-March, the NBA shutdown happened, and boxing shut down shortly after that. So if you didn't fight by probably late February, first week of March, then there's a good chance that you haven't fought since your last fight, whenever that was. So that wouldn't have been good for a guy like Danny Garcia. Very candid interview for him to admit that he kind of almost got complacent and bored as being a champion. It's like the classic Marvin Hagler quote: "It's hard to get up at 5 a.m. in the morning and run 8 miles in silk pajamas, in a silk robe," whatever the exact quote is. And that's what it sounds like. But he says he wants to close strong. He can see himself at 54, which is a very interesting statement, because you got guys like Erickson Lubin, you got Jermell Charlo. He's talking about fighting Porter or Thurman up there. So that'd be interesting to see rematches at a higher weight and different things like that. And you have Danny Garcia with the willingness to fight Spence or Pacquiao. I don't think fans or Danny Garcia's career and stuff can go wrong. Again, Danny Garcia does not get full credit, or not full credit. He doesn't get a lot of credit for what he's accomplished in his young career. He beat Lucas Matisse when Matisse was a monster. Everybody was almost like didn't want to see that dude, that guy from Argentina with them cracks, because he had a chin, he hadn't been stopped. It was at the time, Matisse's losses were disputed and debatable, like heavily. Zab Judah lost and the Devin Alexander. So he really arguably was an undefeated fighter when Danny Garcia fought him. And I think the Danny Garcia treatment, how he got his eyes swollen and stuff in that fight, I think that really messed with Matisse. It was like because Matisse was never the same after that. I think his next fight was the John Molina Jr. fight, and he was getting dropped in that fight, even though he came back to stop John Molina. But it was a tough fight. He got dropped twice. Danny Garcia dropped him once and lumped up his eye. So I think that Danny Garcia, he's kind of been a kind of a soul snatcher. He put certain guys through the ringer, and they haven't really looked great ever since. You see what I'm saying? There's some guys I can think of where that was the case when they fought Danny Garcia. So Danny Garcia doesn't get a lot of credit from the fans for whatever reason, but I like it. I think the Pacquiao fight or the Errol Spence fight, no matter how you slice it, it's a good fight, especially in the pandemic. I know the old media and stuff, they're going to hate and find a reason, something wrong with Danny Garcia, Errol Spence, or make excuses, but we're not doing that. If Errol Spence, he's a grown man, he can decide if he feels ready for a big level fight, see how his body feels, things like that. That's up to him. But like Danny's saying, if you sign on the dotted line, that means you're a willing participant in this crazy sport of boxing. But no matter how you slice it, I think Pacquiao looked great versus Keith Thurman, especially early, looked very sharp. Keith Thurman was undefeated, had beaten Sean Porter, had beaten Danny Garcia, Diego Chavez, guys like that. So that's a credible win. So Pacquiao, he has momentum, even though he hasn't fought since that summer fight with Thurman. I think he showed the world that he was able to turn the clock back and look good against a young, hungry lion, which is what myself particularly wanted to see from Pacquiao, because at the last stage of his career with Top Rank, he was fighting guys that, you know, I really didn't think could beat him. Chris Algieri, Brandon Rios, stylistically easier fights for himself. You know, it wasn't young, hungry lions like Errol Spence and Keith Thurman at the time and guys like that, Danny Garcia. But hey, Pacquiao's still relevant. He's a Hall of Famer. Errol Spence, of course, is a unified champion, so he's relevant. And now, it's like I said, it's just good that people want to fight Errol Spence. Let me know who wins Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia. Are you sleeping on Danny Garcia, or do you think he'll win? Do you think it's the timing with the accident? All that in the comment section. Let me know how you guys feel. Like and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, I drop daily content. I do live streams and a little bit of everything. Give me my opinion. So for the latest and greatest, smash that like button and also subscribe. As always, hate, comment, and subscribe. Till next video is Ego signing off. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxingego, the future of boxing.